Okay, we are live and welcome, guys, to another, Wednesday night watch chat, but with a twist. And actually, I'm very excited about tonight. Not only because my good friend Marcus, we're going to go over his watch and pen collection, but when I first started doing these streams, they were mainly focused on your watch collections, not you, just you, Marcus, but everybody on the chat. Like, I had some of you guys come on and we went through your collection and we talked about it, and that was fun for me. Unfortunately, the well dried up a little bit.
Yeah,
I, I didn't get as many people. I had all the people who wanted to come on, and so that was great. And then of
yeah.
course we switched formats and whatnot. But Marcus,
I
how are you today, man?
good. Yeah, I still remember a lot of those streams. You had you had Penny on,
Yeah,
you had Jason on. I think you had Homer on,
yeah,
Dan.
yeah,
So
yep.
a lot of luminaries. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And
yeah,
it was a blast because you get a little insight into their personality and who they are, how they got into collecting, just by conversing, right?
yeah,
We chat through Facebook, all the clubs, through Instagram and through YouTube, but having a personal connection is also very nice. So,
yeah.
um, customary, wristwatch check, as
I'm wearing the Moser Platinum Perpetual for the month.
yeah,
30-day month. You got to go with the Perpetual. That way you don't have
yeah,
to reset it at the end.
yeah. Good point. Good point. And I'm going with the Yub.
The Yub.
Uh,
That one
the
you don't have to reset the date either.
no,
So
no.
I think we're
That's
on the same
that's
page.
yep, exactly.
We're on the same page.
Let's say hello to some of the guys on the chat before we get going. Hey, there's Joe. Thanks, Joe, for
I don't even
tuning in.
understand what that means.
Today is actually a bones and a half day, probably because of this. I don't know. I don't know what that is. I mean, there's so many theories I
I
have in my
I'm
mind.
not cool enough for Joe.
Yeah. uh Riss Ross, how you doing? Oh, God, total jump, but there's Justin right there. Let me just go scroll back here. Sorry. Um, okay. Riss Ross saying Marcus go low key and enthusiasm with the pens. He doesn't need a hobby. He does not need another hobby for sure. I could attest to that. Wilson, what's going on? Justin, how you doing? Hey, Peter, what is up? Steve Time Hill, how you doing, sir? Good to see you. Chaz from the Berg, what is up? What is up? Guys, let us know what you're wearing on wrist, Philly watch fan, and what pen are you using today? Why not? Um, Rick is here. Hey, Rick, how you doing? Colin, uh, B Deb,
I think we'll get to that point later.
yeah. Bumped for pen talk. Pumped for pen talk. Says Kentucky Man 30. Cody there. Showtime, yeah, for sure. Pale Horse, how you doing, sir? Caliber is here. Jason, Design Atelier. There's Amin. Joey B, if I hadn't said hello to you yet, sorry. Let's get cruising here. Okay, so I'll get back to the chat in a few, but I just want to get uh, k- uh, us kicked off. James, hey James, how you doing? So, before we start, before we get into it, want to get a little background on, how you got into watches, and then if you could segue into how you got into pens, and then we'll keep moving along and we'll jump right in. So, Marcus, please, how did you get into watches in the first place?
It was the Avengers craze. Like I saw the Doctor Strange movie, I think 2016, and that was around the time I got into it. It wasn't just the the perpetual calendar with the
Hmm,
Jaeger LeCoultre, but
yeah.
I loved how like the gears and all that showed up when he was fighting in the dark dimension. I thought it was really cool. And then I looked into it, and then I just and I love the idea of analog in a digital world.
Hmm.
I'm not a motorhead or anything like that. I drive an automatic, but
Hmm.
when it comes to watches, I just really appreciate sort of that analog
Yeah.
feel.
Yeah. Cool. And then so and any kind of similarity? Did you have any kind of moment like that one with pens? Like, where you're
Yeah,
just like, okay.
absolutely. Again, it's it sounds like an anachronism, but it seems like an anachronism, especially. But but I just, and I think it's really good for your cognitive function as well, right? If you're like, I handwrite every day, I use my pens every day, and that's been shown to, like dealing with your fine motor. It does really help with your long term cognitive function. That's been associated. So um, that's where I'm at. I'm not going to start buying vinyl or anything like that, but
Yeah, yeah, gotcha. You know, it's
I think
it's
that's where I
funny.
draw the line.
It's funny you talk about writing and some of the effects that positive effects it can have on you. I was just chatting with some of my friends beforehand, and in this world, I type everything. So like lately, when I try to write something, it almost feels like it's a little foreign, right? And my penmanship is just not that it was ever good or great, but it is absolutely terrible. Like the only time that I'm actually writing anything down, right, is when I sign my name on something, or if I'm making a quick, list for a grocery list, and that is just chicken scratch. Like it's almost like it's like it hurts, you know. So there's part of me that's interested in what we're gonna talk about here because having a couple nice pens and using really nice pens. Like I haven't been using pens like some of the pens that you have in your collection, but pens that are slightly better than your average Bic that you get at the pharmacy. It really does make a difference when you write, and
Yeah,
I could imagine how some of these other pieces might feel.
another part of it is I just hated, like, at the clinic that I work at, it's all these disposable, like, drug
Hmm.
company ballpoint pens that
Yeah,
would run out of ink after like 3 uses, and I got to the point where it was running out of ink halfway through whatever I was writing, and I just get frustrated, and then I like throw it in the garbage and have to hunt around for a new pen. So it got pretty stale pretty quick.
yeah, I could totally get that. Yeah, I mean, looks like I see now why you said you're not going to get vinyl, but the chat is definitely pushing vinyl here for you. A couple guys mentioning the next step is vinyl. Um, let's go over here. Vinyl is the next step, then film photography, and you've gone full hipster. Yeah, for sure.
Could be.
Okay, so we got a lot to cover.
Yeah, we
Um,
do.
and so we're gonna jump right in, and of course I'll be checking with the chat. We're gonna go pen watch, that kind of
Yeah.
alternating, and so let's go with the first piece here. Um,
Yeah,
I
so I'm gonna I want to kind of give want to give more of an overview than my entire collection, because we'd be here all night. So I picked 10 pens because I have 10 watches, right? So I picked 10 pens so that we can alternate through. So the first one that I want to present today is my, where is it? Yeah, it's going to be my Twsbi Eco T. And this is basically I would say the best value starter pen.
hmm,
It's I would say it's very well made. It's got a piston filler. It's a demonstrator, so you can kind of see you can kind of see the ink sloshing around, which some
oh,
people
cool.
like. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And unlike a lot of piston pens, you can actually fully disassemble for deep cleaning, because one of the issues with these internal pistons is that the ink will get stuck in it. So like it'll stick to the sides of the wall, and you'll get staining and all that. So this is I would say it's a Taiwanese brand. I would say it's good build quality. It's not great build quality, but it's good build quality. And it's a beater pen basically. It's so beater pens are a little bit different from a beater watch, because with beater watches you only really have to worry about like trauma to the watch and the watch getting stolen, right?
Hmm.
But there's an additional danger to pens in the sense that there's certain there. I think the more interesting the ink, the more potential it has to damage the pen itself.
Okay.
So there are a lot of really there are a lot of really flamboyant inks that you can use that are not good for the long term health of the pen. So that's why the additional thing is I've got a really damaging ink in this pen. But it's called Noodler's Bay State Blue. It's like, do you remember that Zenith from Time and Tide, where you had that like punch you in the face blue?
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah, so
Yes. Yeah, yeah.
this is exactly like
Right.
the ink in here, but the problem is that this stains everything. Like, you won't be able to get this out of the pen. It'll stain ceramic, it'll stain
Hmm.
marble. I wear gloves when I refill this pen, and I never rinse out this pen. So once this pen is fully clogged, I'm just tossing this. But I love this ink so much, and I really appreciate the pen. So I think if you're starting off looking for a starter pen, I would highly recommend the Twsbi Eco. Um,
Now, what's the price range on this one? So just to
so
give people an idea what a
this
budget.
one's this one's $35.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah, not too bad.
no, not too bad at all. Not too bad. Now, is this plastic that we're seeing here?
Yeah, so I think I'm gonna try and intersperse stuff, but like just like watches, you have to find where the value
Mhm.
added is in a piece, right, with a pen. So I would say there's 5 areas of value. Okay, first of all is obviously the nib and the feed. Okay, the tuning of the nib and the materials of the nib and the materials of the feed are probably one place of value. Obviously, a gold nib and a well-tuned nib from a very respected manufacturer would be higher value, as well as an ebonite feed, which allows for better flow versus just a simple plastic feed. So that's kind of that's one source of value. Another source of value would be the material of this pen, and this is just again this is probably the lowest in the totem pole. It's injection molded resin. Okay, so
Mm.
injection molded resin, it's hard, it's brittle, it scratches very easily. It's just basically this is just it just comes out of a machine. It's automated. This is like the Hamilton of pens,
Gotcha.
right?
And
It's
thank you for that,
amazing.
'cause that was going to be my next question. Like, if you can, pair it up with a watch, and with the same kind of caliber, you, Hamilton watches. Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah,
Awesome. Okay, so let's move on. And I have to say that for a lot of us who know you, well, I mean, not personally know you, but know you through streams and your commentary, that this is a little bit of a surprising pick, yet it's not surprising, right? Because I think a lot of people who have luxury collections and luxury watches like I do, we have one of these. I have the same exact watch.
yeah.
We don't hear that a lot from you, right? I mean, we know what you have. But you don't talk about these other watches, and we're going to see some of them coming up, and I think it's very, very interesting and very telling. So what do we have here?
Yeah, so I for me, I never jumped down the G-Shock tunnel. I understand why some other people do, but I appreciate the heritage. I appreciate the history behind G-Shock. I consider it an iconic watch, even though it's digital, it's battery powered, but again,
Mhm.
when it came out, it's a fantastic watch. I've I've kind of always my collection's always been I look at each watch in my collection and I say, am I comfortable with owning just this watch alone and a G-Shock? So
Mhm.
that's why I
Mhm.
kind of that's how I kind of look at my collection and see which pieces how I really select watches. I feel like I've deviated from that, and we'll see that with this past year with the additions. But if you look at some of my older pieces, I think you can see that each of those pieces could stand alone with a G-Shock as an only watch collection, and something you can be proud of. So, I I like it as it's something that's really a part of my collection. It's not something that I wear a lot,
Yeah.
but again, I'm not in a place where I really need a beater. I
Mhm.
don't
Mhm.
like to have a beater. I think it's disrespectful to call like mechanical watches a beater. Like I would say that if I'm in any situation where the watch might actually be damaged, I would wear the G-Shock.
Yeah, James here. Good point. James, are professional tool watches. I see them in healthcare, law enforcement, and construction. Absolutely. When I ever do anything around the property or workout or whatever, anything that's gonna require some physical activity, I throw on the same exact watch. I got it 45 bucks from Amazon, and it's almost it's literally, I mean, it's as important of a watch in my collection than any other watch in my collection is,
Yeah,
because it takes the bullet for the other watches that I don't want to wear in certain situations. That may be a little bit dramatic, but anyway, yeah. So I was really happy to see that this was part of your collection as well, albeit that you may not wear it as often as you may have at one point.
yeah.
Moving on. Pen.
Pen. Ah, so this is the Lamy 2000. Um, I think that watch collectors are guilty of this, as are pen collectors. We always like to call things iconic, and I think that there are far fewer iconic watches than we think. And I think that, and this is definitely one of those pens where the pen enthusiasts will call it iconic, but I don't
Mm.
think this is an icon. I think there's only probably two iconic pens. You're talking about like probably a Mont Blanc Meisterstück 149 and a probably a Parker dual, either the Parker 51 or the Parker Dual Fold. Those are probably the only two watches that have gone into the mainstream consciousness. So I don't think that this is iconic. Yet this is a favorite of enthusiasts. It's I think it's very unique in what it is. There's a lot of history. It's it there's they always say that it's featured in the Museum of Modern Art. It's not actually featured in the Museum of Modern Art, but it is sold in the gift store. So I think it's something that 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 the people who run the museum, they appreciate. This is probably the only Bauhaus thing that I own.
Okay.
And it's got a lot of heritage. This design has remained unchanged for about as long as a Submariner, 50 years at least. So
Mm.
it's basically unchanged. It's made out of, so it's this is not cheap. This is not cheap injection molded resin. This is made out of macrolon, and which is a type of fiberglass. It has very unique feel to it. And I think that probably the equivalent of this would be the Tudor Black Bay. Like it's just, if you're looking for an only pen, um, and you're not looking to really jump up into the up price ranges, I would say that I would pick this. There's a lot of good things about this because it's probably the perfect daily use pen because it's got a snap cap, unlike other pens which you have to twist.
Hmm.
It's got a very subtle ink window, but a very usable ink window. It's a piston filler, so it's got a very high capacity ink capacity. It's got a hooded nib so that the nib will dry out less quickly, and it can be fully disassembled so that you can do a deep clean, which is again one of the downsides of the pistons are they're really hard to clean. So you really want to be using very water. You want to be using really gentle inks in those, unless you want to stain your piston, because they're really hard to clean. So, but this one it's perfect. Snap cap, high ink capacity, interesting material, interesting design, ink window, and it's got a hooded nib. So
Nice.
um,
Rick wants to ask, is asking, and I probably know the answer to this one, right? But I mean, are they pen related Facebook groups?
yeah, I would join Fountain Pen Network, and then you can branch out from there. There's some brand. I'm going to get to this, but there's some brand fan clubs,
Okay.
and that sort of thing.
Dan, if you ever go to G-Shock in New York City, there's a Lamy boutique 2 doors down. So that's good to know.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. So moving on here, let me get that out of the way. Watch.
Oh, so
So,
this I think they were asking how much this Lamy costs. I
oh,
think
yeah.
it's about $200. You can find them pre-owned for about a 150. Yeah.
Nice.
So, and again, keep in mind that these basically last forever. And you're
Mm.
not, and you're saving the environment because you're not tossing out ballpoint pens.
That's a good point. That's a good
Yeah.
point. I didn't think about that, but you're absolutely right. It is environmental friendly in that aspect. Next watch.
So this is a 1 year so I do own a Seiko. I think people are shocked that I own a Seiko, but this was a gift from my brother. So this is a 1 year limited edition of the Polar Crossing by Matsu Oba in 1997. So it's kinetic. I don't wear this a whole lot, but again, my brothers each have one of these. Well, they don't have this exact one. They have the Landmasters in ceramic. So we all have one. So this has got some sentimental value. So it's gonna stay in the collection for sure.
Awesome. Awesome.
I see a question about pre-owned markets. So for pens, yes. Go on Instagram. It's called, go search up Virtual Pen Show, and that's the That's the whatchamacallit. That's like that's like Chrono 24 of fountain pens.
So there's no Peno 24.
No.
Peno. Okay. All right. Uh, I don't know why I thought that was really, really funny. Um, yep. Anything like Pen Recon. Okay. I
Yeah,
think,
it's exact. Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Virtual pen show is basically Pen Recon.
Okay. Awesome. Awesome. Okay. Moving along. This is a
Ah,
beauty.
I think Daniel likes this one. So so this is the Pilot Custom 823. So this is my first. This is the first Japanese pen that I'm presenting today. There's a big three of fountain pens from Japan. There's Pilot, there's Sailor, and there's Platinum. And unlike a lot of the European brands, they make all their nibs in house. So a lot of the European brands outsource their nibs either to the German manufacturer Bock or the German manufacturer Jowo.
Mm.
So Pilot makes all their nibs in house, and this is also another quote unquote iconic pen because and this is where fountain pen people are not as cool as watch people, because watch people, we have like, you know, the Tag Heuer monocle where we can say, you know, Steve McQueen wore that, right? But with people, when we look at people who fountain pens by celebrities, I think this is probably the one that's the most prominent. So this is a custom 823. The author Neil Gaiman uses this pen with this exact ink that I have in it, which is Pilot Roshizuku Yamabudo. So the nib is beautiful. It's got, so this is a different type of filling system. This is a vacuum filling system. So basically what you do is you depress the plunger, it forms a seal, and then it just sucks up the ink.
Mm.
The benefit of that is that it has a far greater ink supply than a piston or a cartridge converter. So you've got a lot of ink supply. The downside is it's even harder to clean than a piston. So,
Yeah.
but the ink supply comes in handy with this because I've got a flexible nib. I've got the FA nib on this, so that when you're doing flex writing, you use up a lot more ink than other uh, other nibs. So it's good to have the extra ink supply.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just going to jump in here and talk to, I think Time Hill was mentioning about how he's left-handed, he can't use fountain pens. For my recommendation as a left-hander who wants to use fountain pens is get a Pilot, get either the 823 or get the 912, and get the Waverly nib. Basically, you can write on and get a quick drying ink. So it doesn't write too wet, and it writes from virtually any angle. Like the Pilot Waverly nib is probably as a righty, it's one of the best nibs I've owned, and definitely it's very conducive to lefties who want to use fountain pens. So if you're willing to spend a little bit extra, I think it's about, if you get in 912, you can spend it about 200, 250. You can get it comes with a gold nib, cartridge converter, very high build quality, and then you go from there.
And so, speaking of prices, what can you expect to pay for an
So
823 here?
for this one, you can get it for under 300 with a standard nib. So like when we're talking standard, we're talking with fine, medium, broad.
Mm-hmm.
I've got as I said, I've got a FA nib on it, a flexible nib. So it's kind of it's a bit of a boutique nib, so it costs a bit more. I think this was about 300. This was 350 or something like that. But if you just get it in this in a medium's great, and you can get that 250, 280, that kind of thing.
James wants to know: is there a micro brand pen market?
Yes, just no, don't do it.
Okay.
Don't
Okay, fair enough.
don't do it.
Okay, let's hit the chat up real quick and see what we got here. Actually, before we do that, so you mentioned that this pen was from Japan. I don't know if you're
Yeah,
going to plan on talking about this further along. Just let me know if you do, and then I'll stop right here. But we have Swiss watches, we have Japanese watches, we have German watches. Um, is there like a regional dominance of watches? Like, this is
yeah,
Japanese? Is there other parts of the world that are known for their watches?
for sure. Okay, so I would say that the Japan pen market and the Japan pen makers and the Japan watchmakers are completely analogous. They're exactly the same in terms of where they are positioned in the market. As I said, I think that for me the two best nib makers are going to be are Japanese. These nibs are exquisitely tuned, and the amount of craftsmanship and quality control is excellent. And I'm obviously talking about Pilot and Sailor.
Hmm.
They make really bespoke pens and bespoke nibs. I would say that the where it comes to Swiss watches, I would say it's Italian pens. It's Italian pens, and I think Germany probably has some excellent makers as well. So probably Germany's the same as Germany in the watch world. So I would say the only substitution is Italian pens instead of Swiss watches.
Gotcha. Okay. Let me see here if I can find any other questions. I'm just going to keep on moving ahead. Let's take a look at a watch. Speedy Pro.
Yeah, so I think that this is where my sort of collection ethos kind of broke down a little bit. I love this watch. I was surprised at how much I love this. Um, I'd always thought this is going to be unfortunately a placeholder for the Ed White. Everyone knows that I'm
Hmm.
waiting for an Ed White. Sanjay flipped this, so I jumped on it.
Yeah.
Um, I love the bracelet. I love the bracelet so much, and it's going to be hard for me to let this one go when the Ed White does come in because the Ed White bracelet does not look as comfortable as this bracelet. I think this is a very this is a the more I think about it, this is a very worthwhile upgrade, and I'm glad that this is not my first Speedy, but this is an extremely enjoyable
Mhm.
ownership experience, and I'll be sad when it ends. To be honest. I don't think it can coexist with the Ed White,
Gotcha.
but it stands on its own. It's a great watch, but again, this is not something that's going to stay in the collection long term.
Speaking of, I mean, like, do you find yourself, whether it's subconsciously or consciously, pairing up watches with pens?
No,
Okay. Okay. No,
I'm not that
just
OCD.
wondering. Okay. No, no, I'm just wondering. Yeah. Okay. That's fair enough. Fair enough. Kevin S. Do Japanese use lacquer in their pens?
We'll get to that.
Okay.
So
We're gonna get to that.
that was kind of like I would say that's the kind of the entry level stuff. The Macrolon, you've got the injection molded resin. We're gonna sort of step up the quality and jump around to different countries. So we'll get to that for sure.
Okay. So let's move on to the next pen.
Okay,
Oh,
so
do you
this
guys
is
see my screen here, or
yeah. So this is
sorry?
yeah. This is where we
Yeah.
see that that not all resin is created equal. So while before the Pilot and the Twsbi were injection molded, mass produced resin pens, right? This is the Visconti Davina Excellence, and this is a hand turned cast resin pen. So this is extremely high quality resin. Um, it's actually it's cast into sheets. It's cured and then it's turned into rods and then it's hand turned on a lathe, usually by a pen maker. So
Wow.
you can see how much different the quality of the this is why I wanted to show you the quality of the resin versus what you saw on the Twsbi, what you saw on the Pilot 823. And you can see that this is a spiral facet, right? So it's a spiral facet,
Hmm.
and the resin really comes alive. It's almost like a night sky or a galaxy. You can see the chatoyance, you can see different light angle, the light play of the resin and whatnot. So that's why I wanted to sort of show you this and contrast it with the entry level plastics.
Gotcha. And
Um,
so, price point on this one, what are you looking at?
this one 800.
800. Okay.
Yeah.
James says I collected mechanical drafting pencils and was only buying German, Italian, and Japanese former Axis powers. Um,
Yeah.
let's see here. That pattern on the pen is gorgeous. Yeah, very, very interesting looking pen. It is, it
Yeah.
is, it is beautiful for sure.
I would say that the only downside to this pen is the filling system. Okay, so they marketed it as a, this is where kind of, this is this is manufacturer shenanigans, much like IWC with their in-house and whatnot. So
Yeah.
they call this they call this a piston filler, but what it is actually is a cartridge converter glued inside. So that makes it even more challenging because oftentimes you can service a piston, but if the cartridge converter that's glued to the pen breaks, you're screwed. So that's why this one I try not to change inks too much because I don't want to be engaging and disengaging the converter. So
Yeah.
it's
Makes
usually
sense.
this is a one ink pen, unfortunately. So and it's got a very low capacity. So that's the downside of this. But I think it's one of my most beautiful pens for sure.
Oh yeah, very sure. I love the detail on the on up here. This part, which I'm sorry, is this the nib? Is this the nib? I
That's
have
the
no
nib.
idea.
Yeah, yeah, for
Yeah, yeah,
sure.
okay. All right.
And this is Visconti's in-house nib. So Visconti had also been one of those brands that had outsourced their nibs before, and it was they had appalling quality control on their nibs. But once they brought their nibs in house, and then they quality checked their nibs as they went out of the factory, they've gotten a lot better for sure.
Okay, moving on to one of my favorite pictures, and love this watch, the PAM 114.
I for me, I think that we talk. I love Pam. I think I need a Pam in the collection. I don't know whether this is going to be the Pam that continues to stay in my collection, but I think where the value is, like Pam is playing so many they're playing so many tricks on their customers. I think a lot of their in-house movements now, they're either not really in-house and they're overpriced. I think the value is you need to get a 7750
Mm,
or a 6497. That's where the true Pam the true
yep.
the true heritage of Panerai is. I needed something with that that crown guard system, crown
Mhm.
lock system. And this is the best 6497 you can get on the market. Like this is the best this is the best big brand 6497. So I really like this watch. The only thing that holds me back on saying this is definitely a keeper is probably the loom.
Mhm.
I'd probably look at the 111, the 112 if I were to ever sell this one. But I could very well just end up keeping this one too.
Yeah, there's something about Panerai, right?
Yeah,
They get beat up a little bit, you know. They've had some rough times in the last few years. I feel like they're making some kind of comeback, and it's good to see because I have one. I really enjoy it. I would buy another one. This is like one of the few brands that I would have multiple ones in my collection
yeah.
for sure.
And I
Uh,
think that you and Amin, the Pams you owned, that really sort of and it enabled me to add this one.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
It's a super fun watch, and it's unique in a sense, you know.
yeah.
Nothing in my collection looks like it, and nothing in your collection looks like that either. Um, question, Peter C. In regards to the Visconti, what is the maintenance and how often?
Um, I haven't been long enough in pens to know what the maintenance is. The only one that I had the only one that I had repaired was my Leonardo, and I was fortunate because Leonardo is an awesome brand and they warranty their pens for life. So
Yeah.
I had mine for free. You don't really need to. You don't need to really fix these. Hopefully they don't break. Like there's no like set service or anything like that. Just make sure you clean them, you flush them, and you let them sit for a bit.
James says he tried a white dial submersible 42 at the AD, and the bezel rattle made it a $9,000 joke. That's disappointing. I really do like the submersible.
Yeah,
Um, Why no JLC in the collection? Well, I mean, we haven't seen the whole collection, but there is no JLC in the collection
there
anyway.
were four JLCs in the collection. Each of them was were had service issues. Well, three of them had service issues, and one just didn't jive with me, and it was running out of spec out of the box, and yeah, so um, that's why there's no JLC in the collection.
Yeah. Rich Ross worried about Panerai since they discontinued some of the classics at 372, 422, and 233. Paul's here. Hey, Paul. Thanks for joining us. So is Justin EDC. Welcome aboard. We're talking pens and watches. Speaking of pens and watches, the next pen, another
Okay,
Visconti.
This is the most special pen in my collection, because this is what my wife got me as an engagement present.
Very nice.
This is the Visconti Homo Sapiens Crystal Dream, um, and I probably use this more than all of my other pens combined. In my opinion, this is the most perfect modern pen design. Um, just to give you a little bit of history about Italian pens, there's a big five, of historical Italian pen makers. There's Omas, Delta, Stipula, Montegrappa, and Aurora. And so Visconti sort of forced its way into that conversation, in the 1980s, and it was solely on the energy and the force of will and the design genius of one man, Dante Del Vecchio. He's part Gerald Genta, part Jean Claude Biver.
Wow.
He's so charismatic, and for me, the Homo sapiens, it's as close to a perfect pen as possible. I love the design. The pen itself it's very close. It's not an iconic pen, but it's, for me, this is the royal oak of pens.
Mm.
It just shocked the world. The original pen, it was made entirely out of basaltic lava, and it had bronze accents, and
Wow.
it's still made out of, and the feel of basaltic lava on your hand, there's just nothing quite like it.
Hmm.
And I feel like it added an additional dimension to the quality of pen. The actual
Wow.
feel in your hand, that resin feels very similar, resin feels very similar, but this feels so special in the hand.
Yeah.
And I would recommend this over, if you're thinking about getting a pen and you want to get a high end pen, don't get a Mont Blanc. Get a Homo Sapiens.
Yeah. Two questions. So, price point on this one. What are we looking at?
This one, my lovely wife got on a really big discount. I think these are running for about 800. She found it for 600. Um,
Excellent.
yeah. So,
Ex-
and I'll say, she gave me an option to buy whatever I want. Like, I could have gone much higher in the price point for our engagement pen. This is what I chose.
mhm.
So I think
So,
that says something.
so the next question, and stick with me while I get there. You know, in the '90s, in the '80s, in the early 2000s, all I knew in regards to luxury watches was um, Tag and Rolex. Right? Both did a great job marketing themselves. Same with Mont Blanc, but I don't see a Mont Blanc in your collection. Not spoiler alert, there is no Mont Blanc
Yeah.
in Mark's
I
collection. Why no Mont Blanc?
I think I'll add one at some point,
Hmm.
but none of them really speak to me. I feel like they're, because a lot of them are made in resin, and none of the designs jump out at me. Um, I did buy my wife a Mont Blanc calligraphy, 149 calligraphy nib, and I'm kind of waiting for the 100th anniversary of the 149. I might just get it, as like how everyone says you have to own a Rolex. I might get one maybe down 3 4 years down the road, when they come out with that 100th edition.
Hmm. Hey Thomas, how you doing? Eric says his pug is 9 years old. How old is your buddy, Marcus?
He turned 10 this year. Yeah.
Cool pen. Wow, very nice. Cool indeed. Big fan of the Homo sapiens here. Submariner pens.
No, the
Chaz.
149 is the Submariner of pens.
Yeah.
This is the Royal Oak of pens.
I think Colin is sold on the Homo sapiens. Okay, ideal, right? Ideal for writing the prenuptial agreement.
I actually signed my wedding certificate with this.
Nice, very nice. Okay, keeping it moving, and Rolex Explorer 2. This is fairly recent
Yeah.
acquisition.
Um, I'm not jiving with it. Like,
Hmm.
this was something that I added this year. I think that I fell into the trap where it's just like, it's a steel sports Rolex, you should buy it. I think I might have jived more with it if it was a Polar. but I
Mm,
don't think that this is gonna stick around. On an intellectual level, I really appreciate this watch, but
yeah.
I'm not sure that it has um, that irrational emotional response that we all need.
I think for me, I'm not so I'm not crazy about the new 42 um, case diameter millimeter Rolex Explorers, and I think what I have it down to. I just don't like the border thickness of the handset. Like I don't know if it's too black or if it's a little thicker than what I like or I'm used to, but there's something about that handset now that bothers me, and I don't know what it is, but it's enough that really would never be tempted by picking up an Explorer 2. I like the 5-digit Explorers, a lot more Explorer 2s than I do this one, the 40 millimeter. But there's something about this one I'm not sure, but I think it's the handset.
It could
Uh,
be. Yeah, I can see that.
um, Clandestine was I was about to ask you if why didn't you jive with the you could have jived with the white dial, but you prefer the polar. So I think you answered that question. Um, moving on, the
Ah,
Omas.
so I so Visconti's kind of new blood, right? I don't know if you're Game of Thrones. For
Hmm.
the Game of Thrones fans, there's the great houses. There's the old great houses. There's Lannister and there's Tully and there's Aaron, and then you've got the Baratheons who are the new house, right? So
Right.
that's Visconti. But Omas is really I thought I would this more represents traditional high quality Italian pen making, and it's got all the hallmarks of traditional Italian pen making. Unfortunately, Omas and Delta, two of the big five, have now gone defunct. Um, and Omas has split into basically ASC Armando Simoni Club, and Delta has kind of broken apart, and now the founders have formed Leonardo Pens, Scribo, and Mayora. So, but these pens are no longer being made. But this is I just want to talk about this pen. It's made out of a different material. So this pen is made out of Italian celluloid. So Italian celluloid is far rarer and far harder to make than cast resin and injection molded resin. Um, Celluloid is a natural substance. It's derived from the cell walls of wood. So just like a wood table, it can expand and it can contract and it can play around with the moisture in your hand. So
Mhm.
and the thing with celluloid is it's extremely hard to make. It needs to be cured for at least a year. So the material itself has to be cured for at least a year. It's highly flammable. There's camphors involved. And the Italian government has actually restricted the production of celluloid because I think there's some sort of toxic byproduct in the creation of celluloid. So this is an extremely rare material, and most of the high-end fountain pens are made in celluloid. Omas is probably the one with the widest array of classic celluloids that everyone still appreciates. This is like these celluloids are the pen version of old Rolexes, like vintage Rolexes. They go for well above list. I paid way too much for this pen because this is one of the rare celluloids. This one is called cracked ice, or the wild celluloid. Um, and so, if you're asking me what are the hallmarks of Italian pen making, you've got the Italian celluloid. You've got the gold nib. You've got an ebonite feed. So all of these other feeds, including the Visconti, these are made out of plastic. This has got an ebonite feed. It allows for better flow for the ink into the nib. And it's got so it's got a gold nib, it's got sterling silver accents, it's got Italian celluloid, and it's got a ebonite feed. So it's got all the hallmarks, and it's a piston filler as well. So it's got all the
So
hallmarks
now
of classic Italian pen making.
this cracked ice cellular. This is what I'm looking here at the pen. Is this almost like a fingerprint, like no two are alike.
No two are alike. Yes, exactly like that.
Okay, excellent. And then this whole thing, I mean, this was once cell walls
Yeah,
of
I mean,
wood.
I don't, I'm not a material scientist or
Okay,
anything like that, but this is a natural substance that's derived from the cell wall of wood cells,
right.
and it has to be heated, it has to be cured, and I think that the benefit of this is that it's because it's a natural substance. It absorbs and it also repels moisture, so it contracts and it expands. If
Yeah.
you have issue with oily hands, this is what you want. And
Mm,
sometimes with this doesn't scratch as deeply as resins, and oftentimes just the finger oils from your hands will oftentimes sort of smooth over some of the more superficial scratches in the celluloid. So this will age better than a resin pen.
What's the warranty like on some of these
Oh, this
pens?
has no warranty. This one
Right.
I'm gonna have to. If anything goes wrong with this, I'm probably gonna have. Well, for this one, I'm probably gonna send it to their successor, right? So I'm gonna send it to Armando Simoni Club, but they don't make this pen anymore. The the company ceased to exist. So
Gotcha.
it's kind of, and we have independent pen repairers shops
But
around.
what, like a Visconti, what do they offer as like kind of a warranty?
2 years,
Ah,
2 years.
okay. Moving forward, and the Rolex GMT-Master 2, the Pepsi.
I mean, I don't think I have too much to say about this.
Yeah.
This is my most comfortable watch. I love the Jubilee bracelet. I think
Mm,
the Speedmaster comes in a very close second.
mm,
But it's a Rolex.
yeah.
It's solid. It's got a useful complication. I think Rolex makes some of the best GMTs in terms of thickness, in terms of accuracy. It's a great watch if you can get it at list. It's on my wife's wrist most of the time. I don't get to use it much, so
Jason with a good comment here. Natural materials, wood and pen,
yeah,
good. Natural pens, wood and watch, not good.
probably
For
not.
sure, for sure. Okay, so yes, we all know about the Pepsi. Let's move on to the Namki Black Urushi. Now we're getting to Urushi.
Okay, um, so I would argue that we talked a little bit about value earlier, and I think that there's a lot of diminishing returns. I think that in terms of nib quality, probably 300 and above, like probably 500. That's the best you can do with in terms of nibs. But this is the one exception to that rule. I feel that
Mm,
you don't get like I feel that this is the best nib that I've ever written with. It's a laughably oversized pen. So Namiki is the bespoke brand of Pilot. So this is Pilot sort of how Chopard has Fernand Berthoud, right? So this is the Fernand Berthoud of Pilot. So look, I mean, if you look at this versus so like if you look at this pen versus the Lamy, I'll just show you how big what it looks like here.
let
Whoops,
me
sorry.
let me get you solo here.
There we go. Look
Yeah.
how big that is compared. This is just laughably oversized. Um, so this nib is the what they call the number 50 or the Emperor nib. It's a huge nib. And this is the best nib I've ever written with. Um, and this is made out of, this is only probably about, I would say, 3 or 4 layers of Urushi. So this is very I would say this is very rudimentary Urushi. It's I mean, the polishing is exquisite. This is just shines really well. But the Urushi on this is not super elaborate or anything like that. So but this is something that I paid for the nib,
Hmm.
and it also has a very interesting filling system. So we've talked about the pistons, we've talked about the cartridge converters, we've talked about the vacuums, and then this is an eyedropper where you can just screw off the nib, and then you can fill directly with an eyedropper into the
Oh,
entire
nice.
base of the pen. So
Yeah.
this has about, so while the other pens have anywhere between point 0.5, like 0.8 cc's and 2.5 in the Visconti. This is almost 5 cc's because it just goes along the entire, fills along the entire barrel. And this one also can travel because it has a shut-off valve. Because the problem is when you travel with a pen like this, when the air expands and it contracts, it's going to cause the ink to spit out through the nib. Well, this one has a built-in shut-off valve, so you can actually starve the nib of ink and just hold it down, and then it just drops all the ink in here, and there's nothing up in here. And then when you want to rewrite with the pen again, you just open up the shut-off valve like that, and then it will open up the valve. So this one is something good that you can travel with. This has got the best nib I've ever written with. It's extremely comfortable, and I think that this is something that I'd probably use later in life. You know, with when you start getting arthritis, you don't want super small pens. Like this is a lot better, a lot more comfortable writing if you're having like grip problems or anything like that. So,
speaking of, so serious question from James: do you have a preferred pen size, length, girth, weight, etc., and why?
I would say probably oversized. Like I would say this is jumbo, but I would like something a little bit smaller than that. So you know, the Homo Sapiens for me is still a very reasonable size. I don't like the smaller pens. I like the oversized pens. But I mean, even with the Homo Sapiens, you can see kind of the difference between them. Right.
Let me get you.
Yeah. So
if I just compare them again.
Yeah.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah. I like the size. But I think that as you get older and you start getting, you can't grip as well. This is going to be much more comfortable.
Okay. A couple more questions. Are there wait lists for pens?
Are there wait lists for pens? No, I don't think there. Oh, there is one exception for a wait list, and that's it's kind of like the Gronefeld of pens. It's called Konet. It's a Belgian maker. They make these titanium pens that are demonstrators, and they basically had to shut down. They've been shut down for the last 2 years. Well, they haven't been shut down, but they've been filling past orders for the last 2 years. So
Wow.
there are wait lists for the Konet bulk fillers and the Konet king fillers.
What makes a nib better to write with than another?
It's the tuning. I would say it's how well the and it's also your preference, right? So some brands they intentionally make a pen like there are people who like glide like gliding on ice. And there are people who like, you know, some feedback. For me, I like a little bit of feedback, so that I have control. I like to feel the paper under me. And there's some pens which just write glassy smooth, and and that's one of them is Pelikan. We'll get to that. That's one of the German makers.
Okay.
I think that's one of Amin's favorite. That's one of Amin's favorite brands. And some people prefer sort of the gliding on ice feel. Some people prefer they prefer some feedback, and you know, so it's really personal. But for me, I find that the three best nibs in terms of tuning and how well they write are probably the three in-house, probably Pilot, Sailor, Pilot, Namiki, Sailor, and Pelikan.
Excellent. Okay, moving on. The Batman.
So this one's my keeper. I think the Pepsi's probably Joanne's keeper. I love everything about this watch. This was my first limited. Well, I like to call it limited production. They are limited production. So this is my first limited production, like hot Rolex, and it's a keeper. I like having it, and it's yeah. I don't think that we really need to.
Gotcha.
Yeah, the Batman. Yeah. It's a Batman.
Now look at this one. This is
Yeah.
some beauty here.
So that started off as a circular pen, just so you know. And this is where the Urushi lacquer comes into play. Okay, so while the Namiki Emperor had that's very rudimentary Urushi. This is what we call Tamanuri Urushi, which is translated, it's like a pawn painting, and basically what happens is, you want to have a you have a base layer, you have a undercoat, you have an undercoat, you have a solid base layer, and then you have a semi-transparent upper layer. And over time, the semi-transparent upper layer, it will fade and it'll create a gradient to the underlying layer. So that's what happened. Nakaya is actually it's the bespoke version of platinum, which is one of the Japanese big three. Nakaya is probably this has a wait list. These can take up to a year to make. The Urushi artists, they're basically they make the pens that they feel like. So if they don't feel like making your pen, it might take a couple of months. So
Wow, that's funny.
and then this one started as a round pen. So they used Urushi lacquer to create the temanuri effect, and they used packed earth powder to build up the fins. So you can see that these have fins here, right? So you can see
Yeah.
the fins here and here. And then where you see the greatest Urushi is usually the facets. So you can see the facet here, and then you can see the gradient there.
Wow.
And then you can also
Wow.
see the gradient on the threads here. And then that's
Yikes.
just a
That's
cap.
awesome.
Right, so you can
Wow.
see that. Yeah. So Nakaya pens are waitlisted.
Where do you purchase most of your pens?
So there's a lot of vendors. For the non-bespoke Japanese pens, I purchase from Pensachi in Japan. For my European pens, I usually buy from either Pen Chalet in the US or Pen Venture in Romania. And
Okay.
for my Nakayas, I usually buy from Classic Fountain Pens, which you can find at nibs.com. But I wouldn't buy anything beyond Nakayas because they're like a Rolex dealer. The Nakayas are worth buying at list, but all their other pens are listed at list, and you should never pay list for a non-Nakaya pen.
Only if you're comfortable. How much do usually these go for?
This was 1,500.
Okay.
Yeah.
Moving on. FP Journe Elegant. Now this watch it just kicks. I kick myself. I mean, 2 years ago you could probably get this for 10K, right?
Yeah.
And now it's like
I,
double,
I
triple that, right?
yeah. I don't wear this watch nearly enough. It doesn't get enough wrist time that it deserves. It's a really cool watch, and I can't take any credit for buying this. This was my wife actually convinced me to buy it.
I think
So
it's really cool.
yeah,
And I think that how it shuts off and comes on back to
yeah.
life is pretty awesome.
I don't want to give them too much credit because Seiko came up with that first,
Right.
but
Yeah.
it is cool, and the fully loomed disc dial disc is really cool. Like it's super cool at night.
Y-
And it's the only FP Journe that you can swim with. So
Yeah.
um,
And not only that, it's so different than anything else that they make.
yeah,
You know. I really love this watch. Um, but let's move on to more pens. I mean, that's what we're here for. So, the
yeah.
Sailor King of Pen.
So I think that if the Emperor was, I'm saying, is my favorite nib, this comes in a very close second. And then so this is another form of Urushi lacquer. So this is so they basically created the Sakura Nagare is cherry blossom river. So what they have is they have gold leaf swirls that are stuck to the pen with Urushi lacquer, and then in between them they have rodden, or what we call or abalone shells. So they take little piece, they crush up the abalone shells, and then they pick out little pieces, and what they did was they created like they created, if you look there, there's some of the abalone shells are shaped in the like a cherry blossom, and others are shaped like a flowing river. So I thought the King of Pen is one of my favorite pens. Um, I would, again, this is another one I would take over a Mont Blanc Meisterstück. The King of Pen medium nib is probably my second favorite nib. It's the perfect size, and yeah, I really like the Maki-e work on this pen for sure.
Yeah, it's definitely a bold looking pen. I mean, I like it. I just like the looks of it. I know
Yeah.
nothing of pens, but this is cool looking pen. Okay, so moving on. One of my favorite watches, a grail piece of mine for a long time, and you have it. And this is a beautiful watch. Tell us about this one.
Yeah, so it's a GPHG laureate. It won the men's complication. It's it was commissioned by Moser for Moser by Andreas Streller, who's part of a who's who of watchmakers. It's you can basically set virtually everything through the crown, with the exception of the leap year.
Mm.
It's idiot proof.
Yeah.
It's got an 8-day power reserve, and it's got a grand date, and I think it was the first one to use 12 hours 12 months for the month indicator, before Rolex took it.
Hmm.
And I would say that the finishing is high quality. It's not to the level of like a Ferrier or a Romain Gaultier, but it's still quite attractive. The architecture looks really cool, and it's something that I liked daily for a month at a time. I'll
Yeah.
just wind it on a Sunday, and set it and wind it on a Sunday, and then not and keep it on wrist and not worry about it until the next Sunday. So um, it's it's one of my favorite watches too. I really like it.
Yeah. And you made you brought you mentioned one of my favorite parts, and that is using the hour markers as also a month marker. And I think that was purely genius, having that small little arrow there. The date, the power reserve, the way the movement case back looks. I love this watch. Yeah. And does it feel fragile?
No, it doesn't. So
Mm,
I think I don't know if everyone knows, but I I I did a s- like I did a toxic trade for this. This was a toxic trade. So um, I had a platinum uh, a platinum Havana Octa, like FB Journe
mm,
Havana Octa, and that felt really fragile. And I did it before FB Journe blew up. I was like, this is a really cool complication. They were going for same money on Watchbox, and I did a straight trade. Obviously, Watchbox knew that they were gonna sort of juice the Journe market, so they were happy to do that trade. I think this is a more horologically interesting piece, but it's kind of been a what if for me.
yeah, yeah, of
Like,
course.
what if if I'd kept the Journe a little bit longer, I probably could have I could have probably bought this Moser, and then gotten crazy value on the Journe.
Yeah.
But as long this is a keeper, it's never felt it's never felt fragile like the Journe did.
Mm. Okay, moving on. The Pelikan.
Yeah. So Um, Pelikan
Pelikan.
is a German brand, and I think that they are. I don't want to mix my analogies here. I'm going to be guilty of mixing analogies here. But basically, Pelikan and Mont Blanc are the Rolex and the Omega of the pen world. Um, and Pelikan was they make excellent nibs. Both of them are in house, but I've always preferred the Pelikan nibs. Pelicans, same quality. They both of them primarily use um, cast resin pens with a higher quality resin, but they both use resin. And Mont Blanc is almost like twice as much. So, and I've always found that Pelikan, the pistons themselves, like the filling mechanism, has always been superior to Mont Blanc. You can fully disassemble a Pelikan. The nibs feel better, the price is better, and the pistons are better because, again, Pelikan was the brand that invented the piston filling fountain pen. So, and this is a blending of East versus West. So this is a bespoke Pelikan that was hand lacquered in Japan. So Pelikan made the pen, and they sent it over to the Urushi masters in Japan. And this is what we call Maki-e. Maki-e means sprinkled painting. So they use colored dust, and then they seal it in with Urushi lacquer. And so there's various levels of Maki-e. There's the basic Maki-e, which is called Hira Maki-e. It's just a sprinkled flat. It's a flat painting. It's usually very simple stuff. And if you're seeing Urushi Maki-e under $1,000, that's probably what you're getting is Hira Maki-e. And then there's two other techniques. There's Togadashi and Taka. So Togadashi is once the Hira is put down, then they burnish it with charcoal, so there's more contrast in the painting, and that allows you to add gradients and shading and more detail to the painting. And then there's Taka Maki-e, where you actually are building, so the painting becomes raised. And so this one blends both Taka and Togadashi Maki-e. So this is a raised burnish, and they're depicting an elaborate scene from Japanese kabuki theater. And this is one of the most famous kabuki plays. It's called Renjishi, where a lion basically throws two cubs into the valley, and will only raise the cub that's able to make it out of the valley. And oftentimes there's no physical throwing, but when the play is being depicted, oftentimes the actors are actually a father and son team. So this is a scene from that's very very prominent in Japanese theater, kabuki theater. So that's what they're depicting here. So this is the biggest Pelikan. It's the M1000. And I've always wanted an M1000, and I wanted something in elaborate Maki-e. I didn't want to settle for the Hira Maki-e. I wanted something Taka Togadashi Maki-e. So that's what we have there.
Riss Ross asks, are these all users?
Yes, to differing extents. I use them all. Some of them don't come into the office with me. I do a lot of my writing at the desk. Probably the more elaborate pens, like the Tamanuri pens, the King of Pen, and this Pelikan, they stay home. I bring all my Viscontis, so I've got 10 other Viscontis. I bring all the Viscontis with me to the office. I sort of daily rotate. So all of them are users. Not all of them make it into the office, though.
Okay, and moving on to the last watch. Speaking of blowing up.
Yeah. What can I say? I love this watch. I consider myself extremely fortunate to own it. I'm grateful for the relationship with my AD that allowed me to purchase it at list. I think I've owned it now over 3 years, almost 4. So, and this is not something that I could afford now. But it's also not something that I would ever entertain trading in for like a Zeitwerk or something crazy.
Yeah.
Right. I think for me, I've said this before. Until it turns into Grubel money, I'm not interested in talking trade with this watch.
Going back to some pen questions, would you not need to use them so the ink doesn't dry out?
Yeah, so I mean, I cycle through them. So they get at least one use a month. These are sealed, so some of them and these are very well sealed. So most of them don't dry out. Like some of them might take a little bit of shaken to get them started, but most of them write pretty well even if I let them sit. And not all of them stay inked, right? So that's the key. Is to preserve the long-term health of your pens. You don't want to ink if you own 20 or 30. You don't want to have all 20 or 30 inked. You kind of want to cycle through them, and it's just like watches. You don't want to have them all wound at once, right? So for me, sometimes you just clean them out, you let them sit, you appreciate them, and then you cycle through them.
Marcus, let's wrap it up with one last watch.
Oh, one last pen.
One last pen, sorry.
Yeah. So I want to talk a little bit about Leonardo, because we talked about how Visconti has forced its way in, and I think Leonardo is starting, like what Visconti did in the 90s. Leonardo is doing now. Leonardo is basically the Moser of pens right now. They've got a very rabid following, very rabid small following. They don't produce a huge amount of pens, so they've got excellent distribution control and all that. You can't buy any of them with a discount, but they have a very tight collection. But at the same time, of the small number of models they have, they're releasing variants of them that are very desirable. So I thought I'd talk about this pen. This is special to me because I've got the one in the green. This is special to me because this is a bespoke, handcrafted pen by a self-taught Urushi artist. His name is Michael Kulka. He works at a Panerai Studios. He produced only 9 of each, so the 9 of the green and 9 of the red. And he sent me he sent all buyers an article of what went into making this pen. So basically, what he was telling me was there's 4 layers of base Urushi. So this is the raw Urushi, where you apply the raw Urushi so that you can fill in all the pores of the ebonite. Then he put in another 2 layers of Nakatori Urushi, and then he put in 4 layers of a pre-mixed middle layer, and then 5 layers of the top layer, and then he put in 3 layers of a higher quality raw Urushi to seal everything in. So if you do the math there, this is about 18 layers of Urushi. Yeah, and each layer you have to let it cure for at least a day, if not longer.
Amazing.
And this is all hand painted on, and yeah, so it's a special pen. It's not something that you can easily find. And he's and I've been following him as a fan. He's an excellent artist. He makes his own Urushi pens. Oftentimes he'll use it's going to be like, I'm going to take a 6497 or something like that, and the equivalent of that, and put Urushi on it. But this time he took an actual pen that I liked, and he applied Urushi to it. So I would keep an eye on Leonardo. Leonardo is a great brand, and yeah.
So a brand like Leonardo, is this like the equivalent of like maybe like an independent watchmaker, or?
As I said, I think it's probably the closest thing is Moser, because these guys, the founder was the dad, but he's not as involved. The main guy, the head, the face guy is the son, right? It's just like the Maylance, right? The dad cracked his teeth with AP. Then he came in, he brought his money, but then he let the kids run it, right? So Cyril Matrone, he was one of the co-founders of Delta. Delta went under. He started his own brand with his son Salvatore. Salvatore is the Edward Meylan of pens. Right?
Gotcha. Let's go back to the chat here. Nefarian, beautiful dial, referring back to the FP Journe. How does that tantalum hold up?
Holds up extremely well. Extremely well. Very little wear. I wear my FP Journe. I wear my CB a lot. I wear it probably once a week.
Will's the same. Mark's true collector. Master presentation. Colin, I would be happy only buying Leonardo.
Yeah, Colin's got a nice little Leonardo collection for sure. I'm always trying to get him to buy more. They came out with an ebonite with guilloche that I was trying to get Amin to pick up, because Leonardo came out with a guilloche pen.
Yeah. Wow. Justin saying this has been a totally unique, interesting stream. Rich Ross with a nice compliment for you, Marcus. A Horological Society of New York
Thanks,
level
Ross.
education tonight. By the way, what do you call the study of fountain pens?
I have no idea. We should make up a word. We'll leave your thoughts in the comments section.
Penmanship. Justin. Uh, let's see here. Anybody else here? Why not? Why not 19? Uh, okay. Chaz saying great collection of pens and watches. Thanks for sharing, Marcus. Um, well, Marcus, this was awesome, and I knew it was going to be awesome. And I know you were a little worried about keeping the chat engaged, and I think the chat was very very engaged and very very interested in this.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
You know, we collect, most of us here collect watches, but it's not the only thing that we collect, right? So, you know, when I may not be a pen collector, but I understand the passion that you have, Marcus, for pens, and so it's very intriguing, and I just like seeing other people's talk about their passion. So, thanks again. It was well worth the wait for the planning of this. We were talking about this for a long time, like I mentioned in the beginning of the stream. And my friend, thank you so much for doing this here on my stream.
No,
I really appreciate it.
thanks for having me on, guys. Just heads up, if anyone wants to get into fountain pens, this Friday is Fountain Pen Day, International Fountain Pen Day, and so all of the retailers will have steep discounts. So, just a thought.
That's that's a great point. And guys, follow Marcus at Pen Ultimate Watch. Every once in a while, he'll post on Instagram some writing with a pen, and it's nice to see. I
It's
really
not terrible. It's not as bad as you expect from a
yeah,
doctor.
from a doctor. Exactly. Good point. Guys, have a good night, and we'll see you guys next Wednesday. Thanks,
Thanks,
Marcus,
guys.
again.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Bobby.